A helping hand. The first thing Ryan Mitchell noticed as he pulled into his driveway was the moving truck parked across the street. He sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. It had been another long shift at the hardware store, and all he wanted was to get inside, heat up some leftovers, and spend a little time with his daughter before her bedtime. But then he saw the elderly man struggling to lift a heavy box off the truck's ramp. Ryan hesitated. His back ached, his feet were sore, and he wasn't exactly in the mood to play the good neighbor. Still, he couldn't just stand there and watch the old man throw his back out. "Daddy, what's wrong?" asked Lily, his 8-year-old daughter, as she unbuckled her seatbelt in the back seat. Ryan forced a small smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. You go inside and wash up, okay? I'll be right there." Lily nodded, hopping out of the car and running toward the house, her little backpack bouncing with each step. Ryan sighed deeply, rolled his shoulders, and crossed the street. "Need a hand?" he called out. The elderly man, who looked to be in his late 70s, turned around, his face lined with age but his blue eyes still sharp. He had thinning white hair, a neatly trimmed beard, and wore a button-up shirt tucked into a pair of well-worn slacks. "Oh, I wouldn't want to trouble you, son," the man replied, though he was clearly struggling. "It's no trouble," Ryan said, already reaching for the box. It was heavier than he expected. "What's in here?" "Bricks?" The old man chuckled. "Books. A lifetime's worth." Ryan hefted the box inside, setting it down in the front hallway. The house was nice but sparse, like someone who had spent decades somewhere else and wasn't used to starting over. "Name's Ryan," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Walter Bennett," the man replied, extending a hand. Ryan shook it, surprised by the strength still in the old man's grip. "You moving in alone?" Walter nodded. "Just me. My wife passed a few years ago. Figured it was time for a change of scenery." Ryan glanced back at the half-empty moving truck. "You got anyone helping you unload?" "Hired some movers," Walter replied, "but they left early. Guess they figured an old man could handle the rest." That didn't sit right with Ryan. He glanced toward his house, thinking about Lily waiting for him, but the thought of leaving Walter to handle it alone didn't feel right either. He sighed deeply. "All right, let's get this done." Walter looked surprised. "You don't have to." "I know," Ryan interrupted, "but I will." For the next hour, Ryan hauled box after box into the house. Books, photo albums, old records, dusty kitchenware. Walter had clearly packed his entire life into those boxes. As they worked, they talked. Walter spoke of his wife, Margaret, and how they'd spent nearly 50 years in the same house before she passed. He didn't go into details, but Ryan could hear the grief still fresh beneath the surface. Ryan shared a little of his own story, how he was raising Lily alone after his wife had left 2 years ago, how money was tight, but he was doing his best to give Lily the life she deserved. Walter listened carefully, never interrupting or offering empty platitudes. It wasn't pity in his eyes, it was understanding. By the time they finished, Ryan's shirt was soaked with sweat, and his arms felt like rubber. "That's the last of them," he groaned, dropping onto the old couch Walter had just pushed into place. Walter sat beside him with a tired sigh. "I don't know how to thank you, son." "Don't worry about it," Ryan replied. "Just glad I could help." Walter studied him for a long moment. "Not many people would go out of their way like that." Ryan shrugged. "Guess I was raised that way." "Your parents must have been good people." Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah, they were." He glanced at the clock and winced. "I should get going. My daughter's probably wondering where I am." Walter nodded. "Of course. But listen, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to knock." Ryan appreciated the offer but wasn't the type to ask for help. He had been figuring things out on his own for years now. Still, he nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." Back at home, Lily sat at the kitchen table, coloring. Her face lit up when Ryan walked in. "Daddy, you took forever." Ryan chuckled, ruffling her hair. "I was helping our new neighbor move in." "Is he nice?" "Yeah, sweetheart. I think he is." Ryan didn't know it yet, but meeting Walter Bennett was about to change his life in ways he never imagined. The next morning, Ryan woke up with a dull ache in his back. Hauling boxes had taken its toll. He shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his neck as he started the coffee maker. Lily was already at the table, swinging her legs as she ate cereal. "You're moving slow today, Daddy," she observed between bites. Ryan chuckled. "Guess I'm not as strong as I used to be." "Is it because you helped Mr. Walter?" "Yeah," Ryan admitted. "But it was the right thing to do." Lily nodded solemnly, as though filing away the lesson for future reference. At the hardware store, Ryan worked a light shift. His manager, Greg, let him man the front counter instead of the loading dock, which was a relief given how sore he felt. It was during a lull in customers when a familiar voice called out behind him. "Well, look who it is." Ryan turned to see Walter standing there, leaning on a cane Ryan hadn't noticed before. The old man was dressed neatly now, pressed slacks, a dark green sweater, looking more put together than the day before. "Walter," Ryan said, surprised. "What brings you here?" Walter tapped his cane. "Figured I'd grab a few things to fix up the house. And I wanted to see how you were holding up after all that heavy lifting." Ryan laughed. "I'm feeling it, that's for sure." Walter chuckled. "Good man. You saved me a world of trouble yesterday." Ryan waved off the gratitude. "It wasn't a big deal. It was to me." They talked as Walter picked up light bulbs, a toolbox, and a few other essentials. At the register, Ryan rang him up and bagged his items. "Let me carry these out for you," Ryan offered. Walter hesitated but nodded. "All right, if you insist." In the parking lot, Ryan loaded the bags into the trunk of Walter's car, a sleek black sedan that looked like it had been babied for years. "You take good care of this thing," Ryan noted. Walter smiled. "Had it for decades. Reliable. Like an old friend." They stood there a moment longer. "You planning to stick around here for a while?" Ryan asked. "I think so," Walter replied. "Seems like a good place." Ryan nodded, then glanced at his watch. "I should get back inside. But it was good seeing you." "You too, son." That evening, as Ryan was finishing dinner with Lily, there was a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. Walter stood on the porch, a small box in his hands. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "Not at all. Come on in." Walter handed him the box. "Just a little something to say thanks." Ryan opened it to find a brand new set of high-quality tools, far better than the beat-up ones he had been using for years. "Walter, this is too much." "Nonsense. You helped me. Now I'm returning the favor." Ryan hesitated but eventually nodded. "Thank you. I really appreciate it." "Consider it an investment," Walter replied. "You never know when you'll need a good wrench set." The next few weeks flew by. Ryan and Walter saw each other often, sometimes exchanging small talk in their driveways, other times sharing coffee on the porch. A quiet friendship formed between them, one built on respect. But then something happened that shifted everything. Ryan's hours at the hardware store were cut. Business had slowed, and the reduced paycheck hit hard. Bills started piling up again. Despite his best efforts to shield Lily from the stress, it weighed on him heavily. One evening, as Ryan sat at the kitchen table sorting overdue notices, there was a knock at the door. It was Walter. "I won't stay long," Walter said, handing him a sealed envelope. "But I wanted you to have this." Ryan furrowed his brow. "What's this?" "An opportunity." Inside the envelope was a neatly folded letter, a job offer. Ryan read it twice, stunned. It was for a position at a local contracting company, paying significantly more than his current job. "Walter, I didn't ask." "I know," Walter interrupted. "But sometimes, good people deserve a break." Ryan's throat tightened. "Why would you do this for me?" Walter smiled gently. "Because someone once did it for me." Ryan took the job. It wasn't easy accepting help. He had spent so long figuring things out on his own, but for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. The day he signed the paperwork, Ryan walked over to Walter's house. He found the old man tending to the garden. "I don't even know how to thank you," Ryan said. Walter looked up. "You already did. The day you helped me move in." They sat together on the porch as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the quiet neighborhood. "Why me?" Ryan asked. Walter hesitated before answering. "Because you remind me of myself, a long time ago. A man doing his best, with no one looking out for him. And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd pay it forward." Ryan sat in silence, the weight of Walter's words sinking in. "Then I'll do the same someday," Ryan finally said. Walter smiled. "That's all I could ever ask." And as Ryan walked back across the street, Lily waving at him from the window, he felt something lift, like a burden he didn't realize he'd been carrying had finally eased. Sometimes, kindness didn't just come back around. It came when you needed it most.